Millionaire CEO sees a girl leave a note on his beloved's grave. He pales at what it says. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. Now sit back and take a deep breath. This one's going to stay with you. The air at Autumn Haven Cemetery was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed down on the soul like damp earth after rain. The morning fog clung to the bare tree limbs like a memory that refused to lift, and a chill seeped through the fine wool of Jackson Whitmore's custom overcoat as he stepped out of his black town car. His driver knew not to speak today. Every year on this exact date, Jackson made this pilgrimage alone. No security, no assistant, no schedule, just silence and the ghost of the woman who once held his heart. His polished leather shoes crunched softly on the gravel path as he walked his steps, slow, measured, and unhurried. In the world of high finance and global real estate, Jackson was a commanding presence. At 41, he was the CEO of Whitmore Holdings, a name synonymous with power, control, and perfection. But here, amidst the wind-whipped leaves and crooked gravestones, he was just a man still trying to understand how life had unraveled in ways no strategy could fix. 3 years. That was how long it had been since Eleanor Ellie was taken from him. One moment, she had been vibrant and warm, humming in the kitchen and teasing him about forgetting to buy milk again. The next, she was a name etched in marble, a sudden heart attack stealing her breath before he had even made it home. Her absence had hollowed him out like a gutted house. He never truly rebuilt, and he did not want to. Rebuilding meant letting go, and Jackson Whitmore did not let go. He had built empires from stubbornness and precision, but he could not bring Ellie back. As he rounded the bend near the east edge of the cemetery where the maple trees burned crimson and orange, he paused. A small figure knelt in front of Ellie's grave head, bowed, a brown knit hat pulled low over long hair. Jackson's heart skipped. It was rare for anyone else to be here. Ellie's friends had mourned her, yes, but they had drifted. They had moved on. He never did. He did not share this space with anyone. And yet this girl, no older than 8 or 9 by his guess, sat cross-legged in front of the headstone like it was her personal sanctuary. Her jacket was worn at the cuffs, and her sneakers were the kind that had seen too many winters already. She didn't notice him at first. She was too focused, her fingers tracing the edge of a small folded paper she held in both hands. He watched from a respectful distance as she kissed the paper, then gently placed it between the flowers he had delivered the day before. White lilies, Ellie's favorite. The girl's lips moved, but her voice was too soft to carry. A prayer, maybe, or a secret. The kind only children tell to the dead. Jackson stepped forward, then, clearing his throat slightly, not wanting to startle her, but needing to understand. The girl turned. Her eyes were large, brown, and bright. Something in their shape gave him pause. They weren't just familiar. They were haunting. A chill ran up his back, not from the cold, but from the way her gaze pierced through him like recognition. The kind of look you give to someone you've heard about but never met. "Are you lost?" he asked, keeping his voice even. The girl shook her head. Her cheeks were pale but clean. She stood slowly brushing dirt off her leggings. "No," she said softly. "I came to see my mom." Her voice trembled just slightly on the last word. Jackson's chest tightened. He looked past her to the headstone. Eleanor Grace Whitmore, beloved wife, taken too soon. The only fresh flowers were his, and the letter the girl had just placed. "Your mom," he echoed. The words sounded foolish once they left his lips. She nodded and turned back to the grave. "She used to tell me stories. I remember her voice, but she stopped coming when I was little." He stepped closer. "What did you say your name was?" She hesitated. "I'm Lily. Lily Grace." Grace. His pulse thudded. That name. He stepped around to face her fully now. Her features, those wide-set eyes, the gentle slope of her nose, the way her chin tilted ever so slightly when she was nervous, he had seen those before. In wedding photos. In memories that refused to fade. He had seen them in Ellie. He stared at the girl as the impossible took root in his mind. Lily looked up at him again. "Are you Jackson?" she asked. "My mommy told me your name." Her voice was steady this time, clear, the kind of calm that made his knees weak. He swallowed. "Yes, I'm Jackson Whitmore." "Who told you that?" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "I'm supposed to give this to you if I ever found you." She handed it to him with two hands the way a child offers something precious. It was old, the edges frayed. On the front, in Ellie's handwriting, were the words, "For Jackson, if she finds you." He felt the earth tilt beneath him. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. There was only one sentence, one truth that cracked his world wide open. "She is yours." Jackson lowered the letter slowly, his vision blurred by tears he had not realized were falling. Lily stood silently watching him. He took a step back. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked. "Since last year. Miss June brings me when she can. Sometimes I come alone. She does not know." "Who is Miss June?" "She's the lady at the place I stay. Harmony House." Jackson recognized the name. A shelter. A good one, but underfunded. Ellie had done charity work there years ago. She always believed in second chances. "Why now?" he asked. "Why bring me this letter now?" Lily looked down, fidgeting with the zipper on her coat. "Because I saw your picture once. Mommy had it in her things. I heard people say you were rich and too busy. But she told me you weren't mean. Just sad." Jackson felt something break inside his chest, a dam that had held back years of grief, confusion, and guilt. Ellie had a daughter, his daughter, and she had died without telling him. Or maybe she had tried. Maybe this was her way. "Where is your father?" Lily asked. Jackson blinked. "You mean me?" She nodded. Her small voice nearly broke him. "Are you going to take me back with you now?" Jackson looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 3 years the world made a kind of sense again. He knelt slowly in front of her, meeting her gaze. "I don't know how this happened," he said, "but if you'll come with me, we'll figure it out. Together." She nodded, not with excitement, but with trust, as if she had already decided that he would not abandon her, as if Ellie had told her that this man who once forgot to buy milk, but never forgot to show up, would be enough. As they walked slowly back toward his car, Jackson kept glancing down at her, at the way her fingers reached for his sleeve, at the way her presence brought warmth back to a life that had gone cold. The driver, seeing them approach, stepped out and opened the rear door. He did not ask questions. Jackson helped Lily into the seat, then turned back to look at the grave. He held the letter one last time, then folded it carefully and slipped it into his breast pocket. As he took his seat beside her, he glanced at Lily. "Do you like pancakes?" he asked. Her eyes lit up just a little. "Only with strawberries." Jackson smiled. "Then we'll get strawberries." They drove away in silence, but something in the air had shifted. For the first time in years, Jackson Whitmore did not feel like a man chasing ghosts. He felt like a man who had just been found. The late morning sun had begun to burn away the mist as Jackson's town car cruised quietly through the edges of the city past coffee shops and high-rises he owned, but never truly saw. Inside the car, Jackson sat still as stone beside Lily, his eyes locked on the window, but seeing none of the passing scenery. His thoughts were a thunderous tide, crashing and dragging with each heartbeat. Across from him sat a child who had just shattered everything he believed about the past 3 years of his life. A child with Ellie's name, Ellie's eyes, Ellie's quiet steadiness. A child who, according to the letter now folded tightly in his breast pocket, was his own daughter. And he had not known, not once, not even a whisper of her existence until this morning at the grave. Jackson had known business betrayals and media smears and losses in the billions, but nothing had ever made the ground fall away like that letter. He looked down at Lily, who sat with her legs neatly tucked beneath her, her small hands resting in her lap. Her hair was tied back with a faded ribbon, and her jacket, though clean, was clearly second-hand. Yet she did not fidget or whimper or ask questions. She just sat there composed and watchful, as if she understood that she was now inside a chapter yet to be written. "Are you hungry?" Jackson asked, his voice gentler than it had been in years. Lily nodded. "A little. Pancakes and strawberries, right," he said. She looked at him then, and for the first time he saw a glint of curiosity behind her guarded expression. "You remembered." He gave a small, tired smile. "I may not remember where I left my car keys most mornings, but I can remember what my daughter likes on her pancakes." The word daughter tasted strange and holy in his mouth, like a secret newly spoken into the world. 15 minutes later, they arrived at a quiet corner cafe in Gramercy Park. It was the kind of place Jackson used to frequent in his early days before the suits and boardrooms consumed his calendar. The staff recognized him immediately, though he said nothing to invite conversation. He simply placed a hand on Lily's shoulder and guided her to a booth near the back, where the light spilled in gently from the frosted windows. The waitress came over with wide eyes but held her professionalism. "Can I start you with something to drink?" she asked. Jackson looked at Lily. "Hot chocolate if they have it," she said softly, "and maybe orange juice." "We do," the waitress replied with a smile, then turned to Jackson. "Black coffee," he said, "strong, and pancakes with strawberries for the lady." A few minutes later, steaming plates arrived, and for the first time since the cemetery, Jackson felt the tension ease slightly. Lily took her fork with both hands and began to eat slow and neat, like she had been taught manners with military precision. "Where did you learn to sit like that?" he asked lightly. She chewed and swallowed before answering. "Miss June says we eat with dignity no matter what." "Who is Miss June again?" he asked. "You said she brings you to the cemetery sometimes." "She runs Harmony House," Lily explained. "It is a place for kids without moms and dads, or whose families cannot take care of them." Jackson's grip on his mug tightened. He had heard of Harmony House. It was a private shelter mostly funded through small donations and the occasional charity gala. Ellie had supported it for years, always quietly, never for the cameras. He had admired that about her. She had compassion that never needed applause, and now her child had ended up there. "How long have you lived there?" Jackson asked. Lily looked out the window as she answered. "Since I was about 4, after Mommy got sick. She came to visit sometimes before she passed away." Jackson's voice came out rough. "What kind of sick was she?" Lily hesitated. "I think it was something with her heart. She would get tired very fast, but she always smiled when she saw me." Her voice dropped. "She always brought me books. She said we read with our hearts, not just our eyes." Jackson's hand trembled slightly as he took a sip of coffee. Ellie had said that to him once on their first trip together. He remembered how she had curled up beside him in the old cottage in Maine, a book in her lap, her voice soft and sure. That line was not a coincidence. It was a memory passed on, a thread between the life he had with Ellie and the one she had built in his absence. "When did she die?" he asked gently. "About 1.5 years ago," Lily replied. "She was at a care place. I did not get to say goodbye. Miss June said it was peaceful." Jackson pressed his palm to the center of his chest as if the pressure could slow the ache growing there. He had thought she died alone. Now he knew that Ellie's final years had been spent loving a child he never knew they shared. "Why did no one tell me?" he murmured aloud. Lily shrugged, stirring her hot chocolate. "Miss June said maybe Mommy had her reasons. Maybe she wanted to protect me. Or you." Jackson swallowed hard. He had never hurt Ellie. Not in the ways that mattered. They had had their differences, yes. He had been ambitious and absent at times. She had been patient but quiet, holding in more than she let out. But he had loved her, truly, deeply. And now she was gone. But left behind a daughter who carried her smile like a lantern in the dark. "We need to visit Harmony House," Jackson said after a moment. "I need to speak with Miss June. Would that be all right?" Lily looked hesitant, then nodded. "I think she would want to meet you. She said once that if I ever found you, you might come for me." Jackson leaned back in the booth, stunned. "Did she say that often?" Lily nodded. "After Mommy gave me the letter. She said it was important. She said you might need me as much as I need you." The words lodged in his throat. He wanted to ask why Ellie had never written to him directly, why she had vanished after her accident and only returned years later, already sick, already fading. But the answers were gone now, buried with her. All that remained was Lily, and the weight of a promise made without words. They finished breakfast in quiet, and Jackson paid the bill with a generous tip. As they left, he took Lily's hand without thinking. Her fingers curled around his with a trust that felt ancient and new at once. The drive to Harmony House was quiet. Lily stared out the window while Jackson made a single phone call. "Marcus," he said as his head of security picked up, "I need background on a girl named Lily Grace. She is about 8. Her mother was Eleanor Whitmore. I want to know everything. Hospital records, legal guardianship, foster care trail. Do it discreetly. And Marcus. This is priority 1. He hung up before questions could come. The truth would follow. He needed it to. Harmony House sat at the edge of Brooklyn, nestled between an old church and a shuttered corner store. The building was worn but clean, with ivy crawling up its side and children's chalk drawings scattered across the sidewalk. As Jackson and Lily stepped out of the car, a woman in her 60s appeared at the top of the steps. She had silver hair pulled back in a bun and wore a cardigan that had seen better days. Her eyes narrowed as they approached and then widened with realization. Miss June Jackson said. She nodded, her expression unreadable. "You must be Jackson Whitmore." He nodded. "I am. May we come in?" She stepped aside. "You better. We have a great deal to talk about." Inside, Harmony House smelled of soup and lemon cleaner. The walls were covered in handmade artwork and faded photographs. Children's voices echoed faintly from a back room. June led them to her office and gestured for them to sit. Lily took a seat quietly near the window, opening a book from her bag. Jackson remained standing. "I imagine you know why I'm here." She folded her hands. "I know exactly why, and I'm only surprised it took you this long." Jackson's jaw tightened. "I didn't know about her. Not until this morning. At the cemetery." She left a note. June's expression softened. "Ellie always hoped you would find her. She believed in you, even after everything." Jackson turned to look at Lily, who was reading silently, her legs swinging above the floor. "I want to do right by her. By both of them." June nodded slowly. "Then you need to understand what that means." She stood and crossed the room to a locked cabinet. From it, she pulled a file. Inside were medical documents, photographs, legal notes. One by one, she laid them before Jackson. A map of a life he had missed. A life he was now desperate to understand. "This is not going to be simple," she warned. "But if you are who Ellie believed you were, then maybe it can still be right." Jackson looked down at the file. At the baby photo of Lily wrapped in a pale blue blanket. At the list of emergency contacts with only Ellie's name. At the faded hospital record marked "No father listed." Then he looked up and said the only words that mattered. "Where do we begin?" Miss June gave him a steady nod. "With truth. Always with truth." As the sun shifted behind the clouds outside, casting long shadows across the floor, Jackson realized he had crossed a threshold, not just into this old building, but into something far deeper. A reckoning, a second chance. And sitting in the window with a book in her lap and Ellie's quiet wisdom in her bones was the reason he would not walk away. Not this time. Not ever again. The rain had started by the time Jackson and Lily stepped back outside Harmony House, the soft patter of droplets brushing their coats and soaking the sidewalk in shimmering gray. He held her hand instinctively, sheltering her beneath the wide canopy of his umbrella as they approached the waiting car. But inside, Jackson's world was still storming. The file Miss June had given him was clutched tightly under his arm, and his mind spun with the weight of what it revealed. Hospital reports. Legal custody logs. Photos of Ellie with Lily over the years, smiling in a park, sitting by a lake, holding her daughter close, even as the color had begun to drain from her face. He had never seen that version of Eleanor. He had not known the woman who braved illness and motherhood in secret, who protected a child with fierce devotion while dying quietly and alone. That woman had carried a burden so deep and painful it eclipsed even the grief he thought he had mastered. The car door shut behind them, and Jackson exhaled slowly, adjusting his cuffs as if trying to find structure in anything tangible. Lily sat beside him again, now clutching the well-worn book she had not let go of since they arrived. She had been quiet the entire meeting, with Miss June offering no commentary, no interruptions. Just watching, listening, absorbing. She was far too composed for a child her age, and it struck him again how much of Ellie's nature had passed down even without him there. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out the letter once more. The envelope was soft now from his constant touch, and the handwriting across the front still felt like a whisper from another world. If she finds you, not if you find her. Ellie had known. Somehow she had known their daughter would be the one to bridge the distance. It both broke him and knit something back together inside his chest. "Where are we going now?" Lily asked, her voice soft but certain. Jackson turned to look at her. Her face was still pale from the cold and emotion of the day, but her eyes remained steady. "I'm taking you home," he said. "Just for now, to my place. Would that be all right?" She looked down at her book and nodded. "All right. Just for now." Jackson leaned back into his seat as the driver pulled away from the curb. The words hung between them like a thread not yet tied. He did not know what the next days would bring, but he knew he could not leave her at that shelter again. Not after knowing what he knew now. Not after seeing how she sat at Ellie's grave with the kind of heartbreak that no child should carry alone. The ride back to Manhattan passed in silence. Jackson's thoughts moved through memories and questions like a man sorting through the wreckage of a home destroyed by fire. He remembered the day Ellie vanished. The accident had happened in Connecticut, hours from the city. A witness called the police. The report said she had suffered head trauma, was taken to a rural hospital, but he had been out of the country, a summit in Berlin. By the time he returned, the trail had gone cold. She had been discharged, vanished. He searched for weeks, poured resources into finding her. And then one day she walked back into his life, quieter, thinner, changed. She never explained, just said she needed time. They married soon after. But she had never mentioned the child, had never told him that she had carried a daughter through that dark chapter, raised her quietly, guardedly, and somehow kept her safe from even him. And now that daughter sat across from him, asking nothing, expecting little, and yet managing to shift the tectonic plates of his world. They pulled into the underground garage of Jackson's building, a tall tower of glass and stone rising above Central Park. The elevator ride up was swift, silent. When the doors opened to the penthouse, Lily stepped out slowly, eyes wide but face unreadable. She walked into the vast living space with quiet curiosity. The walls were sleek and the furniture modern, designed by some European firm his assistant had recommended. It was beautiful, immaculate, and utterly soulless. Lily looked at the tall windows, the gleaming floors, the perfect placement of every object. "You live here alone?" she asked. Jackson nodded. "I do." She did not comment on that, just stepped out of her shoes and placed them neatly by the wall before moving toward the bookshelves. He followed her, watching as she tilted her head to examine the titles. Most were unread, decorative. She stopped at a framed photo that sat slightly off-center from the others. It was of Ellie from years ago. Smiling arms wrapped around him, wind blowing her hair at the coast. Lily stared at it for a long time. That was her favorite beach, she said. Jackson was startled. "How did you know that?" "She told me. Said it was the place she remembered most clearly, the last place she felt whole." Jackson looked at the photo. The wind in Ellie's hair, the light in her eyes. He had that memory too, but now he realized it had never belonged to him alone. "Would you like something to eat?" he asked, turning toward the kitchen. Lily nodded. "Do you have any soup? I like soup when it's rainy." He blinked, then nodded. "I think I can manage that." She sat at the counter while he worked. It was strange, this small domestic rhythm, the clang of a pot, the hiss of a burner, the small voice that occasionally asked questions. Is that real marble? Do you have neighbors? Why do you keep your cups so high? Jackson answered each one with a calm he did not recognize in himself. When the soup was ready, he placed the bowl in front of her and sat across the island with his own. Lily ate slowly, spooning quietly, glancing up only occasionally. When she finished, she wiped her mouth neatly and pushed the bowl back. Thank you. Jackson nodded. You're welcome. Can I ask you something? She said after a long pause. Anything? Did you love her? Your mom? Yes. Very much. She looked down at the counter. Then why did she cry sometimes when she thought I was sleeping? Jackson felt something crack in his chest. I don't know. Maybe because she missed parts of her life. Maybe because she wanted to tell me things and didn't know how. Or maybe because she was scared. Of what? Of losing you. Of not getting to say goodbye. Of not knowing what would happen next. Lily was quiet for a while. Then she said, Miss June said the world is full of people who mean well but wait too long. You think that's true? Jackson exhaled. I think your mother didn't mean to wait too long. I think she just ran out of time. They moved to the living room, and he showed her the guest room. It was sterile and cold, clearly never meant for a child. She walked in and turned in a small circle, surveying the space. Do you have a nightlight? He shook his head. No, but I can leave the hallway light on. Or you can sleep in my room if that would make you feel safer. She considered this, then said, I'm not scared. I just don't like forgetting where I am. You won't forget. I promise. She climbed onto the bed and pulled her bag close. Inside it were a few books, a single sweater, and a small ragged plush bear. Jackson stood at the door, unsure what else to offer. Do you need anything else? She shook her head. No, I'm okay. Good night then. Good night, Jackson. He paused. Do you want to call me that? You can call me whatever you like. She looked thoughtful. I'll think about it. Then she turned to the window and pulled the blanket up around her shoulders. Jackson returned to his study and poured a glass of water, staring at the skyline that had once made him feel powerful. Now it looked like a glass cage. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Background on Lily Grace nearly complete. You are listed on no legal documents. Eleanor listed herself as sole guardian. Possible amnesia episode following accident confirmed in medical file. Will deliver full report in morning. Jackson stared at the words. Amnesia. She had really forgotten. Not just him, but the pregnancy. The entire timeline. She had recovered parts of herself later. Enough to come back to him. Enough to marry him again. But not enough to bring Lily with her. Maybe she had believed it was better that way. Maybe she had thought protecting the child meant keeping her separate from a world that had once forgotten her too. He closed the message and sat down slowly. On the desk was the envelope again. He opened it and reread the words. She is yours. Just 3 words. But they unraveled the life he had clung to for years. Now he had a choice, to retreat, or to show up, the way Ellie had once hoped he would, the way Lily was quietly waiting to see if he could, and he would. He had already made that decision. This child born of a chapter he had never read was not just a reminder of loss. She was a beginning, a new page, and for the first time in a very long time, Jackson Whitmore was ready to write something that mattered. Something true, something that began with a promise and would not end in silence. The following morning arrived not with a sunrise, but with a heavy sky draped in winter gray, hanging low over Manhattan like a curtain, yet to rise on an uncertain act. Jackson was already awake, sitting in his study with a cup of black coffee cooling beside him and the folder from Miss June spread open across the desk. He had read through it 3 times, committed every page to memory, but still he sat staring at the photograph clipped to the inside cover. Ellie holding Lily in a hospital gown, her face pale but radiant, the kind of joy that only comes when a soul knows its purpose. He reached out and traced her image lightly, as if doing so might bring her voice into the room again. It did not. The soft creak of footsteps pulled him from the memory. He turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair tangled from sleep, the plush bear in one hand. She did not say good morning. She simply looked at him, waiting, gauging. He rose slowly. "Did you sleep all right?" She shrugged. "The blankets smell like new things. It made me miss old things." Jackson nodded, not sure what to say. He was learning she rarely filled silence with noise, and somehow that made every word she did speak carry more weight. "I can get you breakfast," he offered. "Do you like eggs?" She thought for a moment. "Do you have peanut butter?" "I can check." She followed him into the kitchen, bare feet padding softly on the marble floor. As he prepared toast and cut up a banana onto her plate, she climbed onto one of the stools and watched him like he was a museum exhibit. "You don't look like someone who cooks," she said. He smiled faintly. "I don't. Not well, anyway. But I'm trying." She tilted her head. "For me?" "Yes." She seemed to file that away as fact, then took a bite of her toast and nodded in approval. After breakfast, Jackson stood by the window with his phone scanning messages from Marcus. The full report had come in. Every detail was there. The accident in Connecticut, the months Ellie spent in recovery at a facility under a different name, the eventual relocation to Brooklyn, and the legal registration of Lily Grace Whitmore under sole custody. There had been no malice. Only confusion, fear, and ultimately a mother's instinct to protect. One line in the report made him pause. Subject declined to contact known family members following trauma-induced memory loss, citing fear of causing harm or disruption. Jackson read that twice. She had been afraid to hurt him, and perhaps even more afraid to hurt the child. He put the phone down and looked at Lily again, now reading at the breakfast bar legs swinging slowly beneath her. "I want to show you something," he said. Her eyes flicked up. "What is it?" He hesitated. "Something of your mother's." She closed her book and slipped off the stool. "All right." He led her down the hallway to a room he had not entered in over a year. The door opened with a soft click, revealing what used to be Ellie's music room. A grand piano stood in the center, covered with a soft cloth. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a framed photograph of the Maine coast hung above the window. Jackson stood still as memory flooded him. Ellie had played here every evening, soft notes drifting through the apartment like prayers. She had said the piano was the only place where her body forgot pain. Lily stepped inside slowly. She walked to the piano, placed a hand gently on its edge. Did she play every day? He nodded. Almost. Until she could not anymore. Lily looked around the room, her gaze catching on a small wooden box on the shelf. "May I?" Jackson nodded. She opened it to reveal a bundle of sheet music, each page handwritten. Her fingers brushed over the ink. "These are lullabies," she said. "Some are in different keys." She flipped through them with care, then looked up. "Did you know she was writing a book of songs?" Jackson shook his head. "She never told me." Lily smiled a little. "She told me. She said they were for someone who had forgotten how to sleep." Jackson blinked. That was him. She had said that exact thing once years ago when he struggled with insomnia after a corporate scandal nearly ruined his reputation. She had played one of these songs to calm him, called it The Shoreline. He had not thought of it in years. "May I play one?" Lily asked. Jackson moved toward the piano, pulled the cloth off gently, and opened the lid. He nodded. "Please." She placed the music on the stand and climbed onto the bench. Her hands hovered for a moment, then settled on the keys with a surprising confidence. The first notes were tentative, then steadier, flowing into a soft, haunting melody that filled the room like a memory returned. Jackson sat in the armchair by the door, elbows on his knees, listening with his heart more than his ears. Lily's fingers moved gracefully, not perfectly, but with a kind of instinct that made him wonder how often Ellie had played with her by her side. When the last note faded, Lily looked up. "That one is called For When the Sky is Heavy." Jackson cleared his throat. "You played it beautifully." She gave a small smile. "I used to think if I played them enough, maybe she would hear them again. Maybe in heaven." Jackson felt the burn behind his eyes, but did not let it fall. She probably did. She probably still does. Later that afternoon, the two of them went out for a walk through Central Park. The sky remained overcast and the trees were mostly bare, their skeleton branches reaching toward the sky like questions without answers. Lily held his hand without being asked, and Jackson found comfort in the quiet rhythm of her steps beside his. They passed playgrounds, fountains, and artists sketching strangers for $20 a portrait. At a small vendor cart, he bought her a pretzel and coffee for himself. She bit into the pretzel and spoke between chews. "Do you think she wanted me to find you?" Jackson thought for a long time before answering. "I think she wanted you to have what she could not give alone." Lily looked down. "She told me once that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in letters." Jackson nodded. "Then she was right, because I hear her now in every word you say." That evening, as they returned to the apartment, Jackson found himself struggling with a question. How long could he keep her here? How fast did he move? What would the courts say? What would the world say? He called Miss June. She answered after 2 rings. How was she doing? Settling in. She played one of Ellie's songs today. You were right. She is something extraordinary. Miss June was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Jackson, I don't say this lightly, but you should consider applying for custody. She's already asking questions. She wants permanence. And I believe truly you're ready to give it to her." He exhaled. What would that require? A petition to family court, background check, home inspection, and proof of a stable emotional relationship. That last one is what matters. And I think you're already building it. Jackson ran a hand through his hair. Then I'll do it, whatever it takes. She deserves more than a guest room and a quiet promise. He hung up and walked to Lily's room. She was already in bed, her bear tucked under her arm. Her eyes opened as he stepped in. "Are you leaving?" "No, just checking on you." She looked at him for a long time, then whispered, "Are you staying?" He felt the ground shift beneath that question. Slowly he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm staying. Not just tonight. Not just for now. I'm going to be here." She blinked as if trying to believe it and then nodded. "All right. Good night." "Good night, Lily." He stood, reached the door, and then heard her voice again. "Will I still be Lily Grace Whitmore? Or do I become something else?" He turned slowly. "You'll always be Lily Grace Whitmore. And one day, if you want, the whole world will know what that name means." He closed the door gently and leaned against it for a moment, eyes shut. His mind no longer filled with corporate projections and quarterly returns. Only the sound of a girl's lullaby echoing in his heart. And for the first time in years, Jackson Whitmore did not feel like a man who had lost everything. He felt like a man finally beginning to find his way home. The following week brought changes that unfolded like a slow thaw after a long winter. Jackson found himself adjusting to rhythms he had not known in years. Morning routines that included making breakfast for 2 instead of grabbing a black coffee and a protein bar, walks to the bookstore around the corner where Lily insisted on reading every back cover before deciding. Evenings where the piano was no longer silent but softly played by the hands of a little girl who never demanded attention, yet somehow drew all of it. She did not ask for toys or grand gestures. She asked for his presence, and that he had learned was the hardest and most necessary gift of all. On Monday afternoon, Jackson sat at his desk in the corner of his study, reviewing the draft of his formal custody petition. His legal team had submitted the initial paperwork with astonishing speed, and social services was scheduled for an informal home visit that Friday. It wasn't guaranteed. The state always preferred continuity of care, and Lily had only been in his home a few days. But there were exceptions, and his case was compelling. He was her biological father. He had the resources. More importantly, the social worker noted in her preliminary review that the girl seemed emotionally bonded to him already. He stared at the line again, his thumb hovering over the printed page. Emotionally bonded. He didn't know what love looked like from a child's perspective, but he knew what hope felt like when it entered a room. Lily had brought it with her that first night and had not taken it back. The quiet broke with the soft knock of knuckles on his study door. Lily peeked in. "There's someone at the elevator," she said. The doorman called. Jackson stood immediately. Did he say who? Lily handed him a note. Just said it was a woman, and that she asked for you by name. Jackson took the slip of paper. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the name signed at the bottom hit him with the force of a wave that had been building quietly on the horizon. Francesca Vaughn. He stepped into the hallway, straightened his cuffs, and smoothed his collar. Lily followed at a distance, curious but silent. When the elevator doors opened, a woman stepped out with a long coat, dark hair swept into a neat twist, and a leather briefcase hanging from one shoulder. She was not the type to tremble or shrink. Francesca had always been a force of precision. She extended her hand coolly. "Mr. Whitmore." Jackson nodded, shaking her hand with cautious professionalism. "Francesca, I didn't expect to see you again, nor I you, until last week." Her eyes flicked toward Lily, who stood quietly at the corner of the hallway watching. Francesca raised an eyebrow. "Is she—" Jackson interrupted softly. "Come into the study." Inside, the door closed behind them, and Lily returned to the piano, pretending not to listen, though her ears strained toward every word. Francesca sat without being offered a seat, crossing one leg over the other. "I came to see Eleanor," she began. "At the cemetery. I heard she had passed. I brought flowers." Jackson stayed standing. She used to work for Francesca's firm, remember? Legal assistant years ago. That was before her life turned and before their paths diverged. Francesca continued. "I did not expect to see a child there, alone. Leaving a note, I waited, watched. And when she left, I followed from a distance. Not to scare her, to understand, to confirm a suspicion I've carried for years, that Ellie had disappeared from my office not because she wanted to hide from me, but because she was hiding something far more vulnerable." Jackson's voice was quiet. "You followed a child." Francesca met his gaze. "I protected her in case she needed it. Do not mistake my methods. The girl is remarkable. She left a note that read like poetry. Grief sharpened into clarity. Jackson felt a tightness rise in his throat. "What do you want, Francesca?" She leaned forward slightly. "I want to know the truth. Did Ellie tell you about her pregnancy? Did she ask you to keep it secret? Or did she really vanish from you too?" He looked down. "The second. She had memory loss after the accident. By the time she returned, she remembered parts of us, but not the child. I didn't know until last week." Francesca sat back. "Then I owe you an apology. I always thought you had kept her hidden. Protected your image while she withered away in some apartment with a child and no support. That was never who I was." Francesca gave a small smile. "Perhaps not, but it was who your world allowed you to be." He looked away. "You tracked her for years, didn't you?" Francesca did not deny it. "I kept loose tabs, saw the name change, saw the address updates, but never moved on it. I thought she was choosing a life away from the corporate machine. I respected that. I see now that she was surviving. With strength, I underestimated." Jackson felt the truth of that settle in his chest like a stone. Francesca stood and walked toward the bookshelf. "You are applying for custody." "How do you know that?" She raised an eyebrow. "Please. My firm represents half the family court circuit. It was only a matter of time." "Then what? Are you here to challenge it?" "No, I'm here to help." She turned toward him. "If you want it." Jackson was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Why?" Francesca's expression softened. "Because once Eleanor sat in my office crying with a notebook in her hand. She said if anything ever happened to her, she hoped her daughter would find someone who could read what she left behind and understand it. Not judge it. Not rewrite it. Just understand. And if you're that person, then you should not face that fight alone." He nodded slowly. "I am trying to be that person." Francesca pulled a business card from her coat. "Call me if you need help with court preparation, or if you need someone who understands how your world works and how to make it listen." She started toward the door, then paused. "She's not like other kids." "That one." "I know." She's a lighthouse. Jackson blinked. That's what Ellie used to call her. Francesca stepped out and disappeared into the elevator, leaving a silence behind that felt strangely like peace. Jackson turned to see Lily standing just inside the study. She had been listening after all. "What's a lighthouse?" she asked. He smiled gently. "It's a light that helps people find their way home." She thought about that. Then she said, "I want to visit her grave again. With you this time." Jackson nodded. "Then we'll go. Tomorrow. After school." Lily looked out the window. "Do you think she'd be proud of you now?" Jackson paused. "I don't know, but I'm proud of you." Her lips turned up faintly. "That's good, because I think she'd want us to try, even if it's scary." The next day, Jackson walked Lily to her new school. A quiet private academy nestled behind old brownstones, its entrance hidden by ivy and a red door. She had been nervous, but when he knelt beside her outside the gate and said, "Just be who you are," that's more than enough. She squeezed his hand and walked through without looking back. He stood there for a long while after the doors closed behind her, realizing that trust could be as silent as a child not turning around. Later that afternoon, they returned to the cemetery. Lily carried fresh flowers, and Jackson carried the old photograph from the music room. They stood in front of the gravestone where her note had first changed everything. Lily placed the bouquet down gently and sat beside it. Jackson remained standing. "I never knew she had a daughter. Until your note." Lily nodded. "I think she wanted you to know when you were ready." He looked down at the stone. The name Eleanor Grace Whitmore carved in soft gray marble. Beneath it the words she had chosen herself. Let the silence carry the truth. He knelt beside Lily. "I have something for you." He handed her the photo. "Your mother loved this place, said it was where she felt whole." Lily stared at the picture for a long moment. "I've never seen her that happy." She looked up at him. "Maybe we can come here every year, like a tradition." Jackson placed his hand on hers. "We will. Every year. And in the years to come, we'll make sure the world remembers who she was, not just for what she lost, but for what she left behind." They sat there as the sun began to break through the clouds, casting faint gold over the stone. And for the first time, the silence did not feel like mourning. It felt like a promise. A chapter just beginning. The rain came unexpectedly on Thursday evening, thick and silver against the tall windows of the penthouse. Jackson stood in the kitchen rinsing rice under the faucet, listening to the weather shift as the wind began to rattle the glass. Lily sat at the counter, doing homework, her handwriting neat and deliberate. They had started calling this their quiet hour at a time, without television or phones, just soft piano music playing in the background and the sound of two people figuring out how to belong to each other. Jackson turned down the stove and reached for the soy sauce when his phone vibrated across the counter. It was Francesca. He answered with a nod toward Lily. "Keep working," he mouthed. She gave him a thumbs up without looking away from her math sheet. Francesca's voice was brisk. "The custody hearing has been fast-tracked. You have a hearing scheduled for Tuesday morning." Jackson blinked. "That soon?" "It is not unusual when there are compelling family ties and no competing claimants. Your financials are solid. The home inspection went well. And the social worker who observed you and Lily yesterday gave a glowing report. That should help sway the judge." Jackson exhaled. "What about Lily's statement? She's old enough to have a say." Francesca's tone shifted slightly. "I've submitted a letter she wrote. It will be reviewed privately by the judge before the hearing. It's honest, brave. I think it might be the most powerful thing in your favor." After the call, Jackson stirred the rice, distracted. Lily glanced up. "Was that the lawyer lady?" He nodded. "She told me the hearing is on Tuesday." Lily put down her pencil. "Is that when they decide if I stay?" "Yes. But I want you to know that no matter what happens in court, I'm not going anywhere." Lily was quiet. Then she said, "I want to tell the judge myself." Jackson paused. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "If they're going to decide my life, I should be part of it. Jackson gave her a small smile. Then we'll talk to Francesca and make sure you're heard. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Jackson stood on the balcony with the rain thinning into mist and stared down at the streetlights below. He thought of the years he had spent chasing shadows of success, the promotions, the partnerships, the headlines. None of them had ever made him feel the way he did now when Lily looked at him with trust. He thought of Ellie's laughter echoing off piano keys and of the letter she never got to write. He realized this hearing was not just about custody. It was about redemption, about finally becoming the man Ellie had seen in him all those years ago. The morning of the hearing arrived with bright skies and nervous silence. Francesca met them on the courthouse steps. She was dressed in gray with her hair pulled back in a sharp knot. She knelt in front of Lily and gave her a rare smile. "You ready?" Lily held her small folder against her chest. "I brought the drawing." Francesca raised an eyebrow. "What drawing?" "You'll see." Inside the courtroom, the judge was a tall woman with kind eyes and a slow voice that calmed the air around her. Jackson sat at the table with Francesca while Lily was seated beside a court-appointed child advocate. The hearing began with procedural questions. Jackson answered everyone clearly, his voice steady. Francesca presented documentation, school records, Ellie's medical history, and the home study results. When the judge asked whether the child had any living relatives on the mother's side, Francesca replied, "None who have come forward." The child's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, raised her alone. The father, Mr. Jackson Whitmore, was unaware of the child's existence until recently due to circumstances involving memory loss and a lack of medical disclosure. There was no evidence of willful abandonment. The judge nodded. Then she turned to Lily. "Would you like to speak, dear?" Lily stood slowly. She walked to the front with a small envelope in one hand. She did not read from it. Instead, she looked directly at the judge. "My name is Lily Grace Whitmore. I'm 10 years old. My mom used to say that families are built in pieces, that not all of them come at once. Sometimes they show up late but still matter just as much. I didn't know my dad until a few weeks ago, but I know him now, and I want to keep knowing him." She opened the envelope and pulled out a folded sheet. "This is a drawing of the lighthouse near my old house. My mom said I was her lighthouse. I think she meant I helped her when she was sad or lost. But now my dad is mine. He doesn't say everything right. He doesn't play the piano like she did, but he shows up, he listens, and he lets me be me. That's how I know it's real." The courtroom was silent. Even the bailiff shifted in his seat. The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Lily. That was very brave." Lily returned to her seat and looked at Jackson. He gave her a smile, his eyes glistening. The judge cleared her throat. "After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, I am granting sole custody of Lily Grace Whitmore to her father, Mr. Jackson Whitmore, effective immediately." The courtroom let out a soft, collective breath. Jackson closed his eyes. When he opened them, Lily was running toward him. He knelt and caught her in his arms. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it," he said back. Outside, Francesca walked beside them. "That was extraordinary," she said to Lily. "You melted that courtroom." Lily smiled. "I just told the truth." Francesca looked at Jackson. "And now comes the real work. This is not a ribbon cutting. This is the beginning." Jackson nodded. "I know, but beginnings are what we needed." Francesca placed a hand briefly on his shoulder. Ellie would be proud. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking down the courthouse steps like punctuation marks on a long sentence finally complete. That evening, Jackson and Lily sat in the music room. He had arranged for the piano to be tuned professionally, and it now stood gleaming under the lamplight. Lily placed a new sheet of music on the stand. It was a lullaby she had been writing herself, dedicated to a name she said was too big for just a grave. It was titled Grace and Light. Jackson listened as she played the first few bars. It was delicate, almost hesitant, but as the melody unfurled, it took shape like a story being told without words. When she finished, she turned to him. "Do you think she hears it?" Jackson nodded. Every note, and every beat in between. Later that night, as he tucked her into bed, Lily looked up at him. Does it scare you? What? Being a dad? He smiled. Every day. But not in the way you think. It scares me because I want to get it right. Because you matter. She nodded. Good. Because I'm scared too. But in the good kind of way. Jackson brushed a strand of hair from her face. Then we'll be brave together. As he turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, he felt a stillness settle inside him. The kind of stillness that came not from loneliness, but from something finally found. He looked down the hallway where the photo of Ellie now hung beside a framed copy of Lily's drawing, a lighthouse on a cliff shining out across the sea, and in the distance a small boat making its way home. He stood there a moment longer, the night pressing gently against the windows, and he knew without a doubt that while the storm had brought them together, it was love, quiet, patient, and unwavering, that would keep them whole. The days that followed the hearing unfolded with a strange sort of stillness, as if life was holding its breath in reverence of something newly born. Jackson found himself reading more than usual, mostly books on parenting, child psychology, even secondhand volumes on music therapy he ordered because Lily mentioned once that sound made her feel safe. He stopped checking his business emails past dinner and began turning his phone off when she did her homework. There were still moments of uncertainty, moments when he wondered if he was doing enough or doing too much. But Lily never demanded perfection. She only asked for presence, and he gave it. One rainy afternoon, as Lily built a puzzle on the living room rug, she looked up at Jackson and asked a question that stopped him cold. Did Mom leave anything else behind? Anything for me? He put down his book. What do you mean? She shrugged. I mean something she made. Or wrote. I keep thinking about the piano song, and the way she always hummed when she cooked. Maybe there's something she wanted me to know. Something she didn't get to say. Jackson thought about that for a long moment. He had searched Eleanor's apartment after her passing, handled every drawer, every closet, every box of sheet music and old sweaters and things she never had the heart to throw away. There had been no letters, no journals, no confessions or final words, but there had been a music box. He stood, went to the top drawer of his study, and returned with the small silver box. It was square about the size of his palm, with delicate engravings along the edge. He wound the bottom gently and opened the lid. The soft melody floated out. Lily sat up instantly. That's the one. That's the one she used to hum. Jackson blinked. You remember? She nodded. Every night when she thought I was asleep, she'd hum it like she was praying. They listened in silence as the tune played. When it stopped, Lily asked if she could hold it. He passed it to her. She turned it over and then froze. There's something inside. What? She pointed to a tiny screw along the inside of the lid. There's a flap. I think it opens. Jackson took it back and fetched a jeweler's screwdriver from his desk. Carefully, he pried the interior panel loose. A folded piece of paper had been tucked inside, yellowed with time, and worn at the edges. He unfolded it slowly. It was a letter. He read the opening lines silently, his throat tightening. Then he read aloud for Lily. To my lighthouse. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to answer your questions or brush the hair from your eyes or play the last lullaby you always asked for. I wish I had longer. I wish I had forever. But since I cannot give you that, I will give you what I can. The truth. Jackson stopped reading for a moment. His voice had cracked. Lily looked up at him, her hands curled tightly in her lap. Keep going, she whispered. Please. Jackson continued. You were not a mistake. You were not an accident. You were not something I hid out of shame. You were my miracle. When the doctors told me I would never carry a child, I stopped believing in the impossible. But you changed that. You were impossible, and still you came. I didn't tell your father because I wasn't ready. And then the accident stole so many memories that I lost my courage. I remembered him in flashes. But by the time I remembered fully, I was already sick and afraid of what I would take from you if I told him too late. So I left this. In case you ever needed to know that he loved you even when he didn't know you. He gave me a part of himself, and I gave that to you." Jackson wiped a hand across his face and continued reading, his voice softer now. "There is music in you. Not just the kind that comes from notes and keys, but the kind that lives in people who feel deeply. Use it. Let it carry you when the world feels heavy. And if you ever find him, if he is kind, let him in. He has a good heart. He just buried it for a long time. But I saw it once. And you will too. Love always, even in silence. Mom." When Jackson finished, he lowered the letter slowly. Lily was crying. Not loud sobs, but quiet tears that slid down her cheeks without shame. She held the music box in both hands like it was the last warm thing in the world. Jackson moved beside her and pulled her into his arms. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She didn't speak, just pressed her face into his chest and clung to him like she had been waiting for that letter all her life. The next morning, Lily insisted on taking the letter to school for show and tell. She wrapped it carefully in a silk cloth and placed it in a clear folder. She told her teacher it was not just a memory. It was a map. Her classmates asked her questions she answered with grace and quiet pride. That evening, her teacher called Jackson personally. "I have never seen a child speak about loss with so much wisdom. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." That weekend, Jackson took Lily to the coast. It was a trip Eleanor had always wanted to make with her daughter, but never could. They walked along the cliffside trail where a lighthouse stood, weathered but proud. Lily ran ahead and touched the base of the stone structure. "This is where she wanted to bring me," she said. "I can feel it." Jackson stood beside her and looked out over the endless water. "Then we'll come every year." She smiled, like a tradition. He smiled back, like a promise. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep with the music box in her lap, the melody still faintly playing as she breathed in steady rhythm. Jackson glanced at her through the rearview mirror, then at the road ahead. He did not know what the future held. There would be tough days, teen years, tears, maybe mistakes. But there would also be music, laughter, letters that did not need to be written because they would be spoken instead. And in that moment, he understood something Eleanor had written. That music lived in people who felt deeply, and he finally did. Because of her, because of Lily. Because love, when it was real, did not need to be perfect. It only needed to stay. The city lights came into view as the car crested the hill. The same skyline that once felt like a cage now shimmered like a homecoming. And in the quiet hum of tires on asphalt and the last fading notes of a lullaby, Jackson Whitmore became what he was always meant to be, a father. Spring touched the city like a soft promise. Trees on the boulevards bloomed pale pink. Windows were flung open to let in the scent of sun-warmed pavement and the laughter of children on bicycles. Jackson Whitmore stood at the edge of the school auditorium, watching Lily rehearse with her music class for the spring recital. The melody they were practicing was a song Lily had composed herself, inspired by her mother's lullaby, and finished with Jackson's help during their evenings at the piano. It was called "A Place Called Home." He had never heard something so full of memory and hope all at once. He blinked and looked away for a moment, pretending to check his phone just to wipe at his eyes unnoticed. When rehearsal ended, Lily ran up to him with her backpack slung over one shoulder and a wide grin stretching across her face. "Did you hear the part where it goes higher than before? I added that yesterday." Jackson nodded. "It gave me goosebumps." She beamed. "Good. Because I want Mom to hear it too." She looked up at him, then eyes serious. "Do you think she would be proud of me?" Jackson crouched beside her. "I know she would." He tapped her chest gently. "She's in there. Every note you play. Every time you're kind. She's with you." Lily hugged him hard, arms wrapped around his neck like she never wanted to let go. He held her back with the same quiet intensity. Some things, he realized, did not need to be spoken to be understood. Later that night after dinner, they sat on the balcony watching the lights come on in the buildings across the city. Jackson had poured himself a cup of tea while Lily had her favorite strawberry milk. The music box sat between them on the table, unwound for now. Lily traced the pattern on its silver lid with one finger. "I think I'm ready to visit her grave again," she said softly. Jackson looked at her. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I want to bring her the song. Maybe she can hear it. Maybe she already has." That weekend they returned to the cemetery. The grass had grown thicker, the trees greener. A small stone bench now stood near Eleanor's headstone, a gift Jackson had quietly commissioned and placed with the help of the groundskeeper. It had one word engraved in script on the backrest: Grace. Lily sat down, opened her music folder, and began to play using a small electric keyboard they had brought with them. The tune floated over the quiet grounds, soft and slow. A couple of other visitors paused in passing, some with gentle smiles, some simply still. When she finished, Lily touched the headstone and whispered, "I'm okay now, Mom. I miss you, but I'm okay. And Daddy's okay too." Jackson stood a few steps back, hands in his coat pockets, letting the moment be hers. When Lily finally turned, he met her halfway. She looked lighter somehow, as if a weight she had been carrying alone had finally been placed down between them and left there for good. She took his hand. "I think she liked it." Jackson squeezed her fingers gently. "So do I." On the way back to the car, Lily asked a question that made Jackson pause. "Can we do something for other kids like me?" He looked at her. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Kids who don't have moms or dads, or who don't know how to talk about the people they lost. Maybe we can help them with music." Jackson blinked. "That is a beautiful idea, and a very big one." She smiled. "You're good at big ideas. I'm good at small ones. We make a good team." He laughed, then the kind of laugh that came from somewhere deep in his chest. "I guess we do." That night he stayed up late drafting a proposal. The next morning he sent emails to his business partners and a few nonprofit leaders he had met through Ellie years before. Within a week they had a name: the Grace Project, a foundation for music and memory therapy helping children process grief and trauma through melody, rhythm, and storytelling. Lily wanted to write the mission statement herself. It read, "Sometimes when you cannot find the words, a song will carry them for you. My mom taught me that. Now I want to help others remember how to listen to the songs they already carry." They launched the foundation 3 months later in a renovated community center downtown. On opening day, Lily cut the ribbon herself, while Jackson stood proudly behind her, surrounded by neighbors, journalists, and children who had already signed up for their first session. There were piano keys painted on the walls, music sheets turned into mobiles, and a small mural of a lighthouse that Lily and Jackson had painted together one Sunday afternoon. It showed a boat sailing home across the waves, and in its beam stood a girl holding a lantern and a man watching the sky. Weeks turned into months. Summer came, and with it new routines. Lily started swimming lessons. Jackson learned how to braid her hair with uneven results. They planted a small garden on the penthouse terrace: tomatoes, lavender, and tiny sunflowers. Lily named each plant after a musical term: Adagio, the tomato plant; Crescendo, the tallest sunflower. They were silly and ordinary things, but in those ordinary things lived the extraordinary truth of a life that had been broken and rebuilt with gentleness and time. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted their living room in gold, Jackson sat beside Lily while she practiced piano. She turned to him suddenly. "Can I tell you something?" "Always. I used to think you forgot about us, that maybe you knew about me and didn't care." Jackson looked at her, pain flickering across his features. "I'm sorry you felt that." She shook her head. "I don't feel that now. I know it wasn't like that. I just wanted to say I'm glad you came back, even if it was late." He touched her hand gently. "I didn't find you by accident. I think your mom led me. And you saved me from being alone in a way no one else could. You gave me back my name, and she gave me you." That night, Lily placed the music box beside her pillow. She wound it only once. The tune played softly as she drifted off to sleep. Jackson stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, watching the way her hand curled around the corner of her blanket, just like Ellie used to do. He stepped into the hallway, opened his study drawer, and placed the letter from Eleanor in a protective sleeve. Then he wrote something beneath it on a note card and placed it beside the letter. It read, "She heard the song. She followed the light. And because of her, I found the way home." Outside, the stars blinked like they had been waiting all day to speak. And in a tall building with a rooftop garden and a music room that never stayed quiet for long, a man who had once walked alone found himself no longer searching. Because love, when given without condition, does not end. It simply changes its shape, from a wife's melody to a daughter's laughter, to the steady heartbeat of a home that sang softly, and always you are not alone. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Sometimes the quietest moments hold the deepest truths, and the smallest notes carry the loudest echoes of love. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. We read every word. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. And if you're ready for another emotional journey, click on the video on your screen now. We promise it's one you won't forget. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.